You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome back, listeners and viewers, to What's the T-Bev, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on the BQN. I'm your host, Christos. What's the T-Bev is a podcast where I interview members of the LGBTQIA plus community and our allies. We get to know our guest Trekdom and discuss current Trek news and speculation. Remember, you can watch What's the T-Bev on our YouTube channel of the same name or listen wherever you get your BQN podcasts. Well, I'm actually at this 3 weeks in a row, listeners and viewers, and I've kind of hit a stride, but there will be a 1 to 2 week break after this episode drops. Warning you now. But with that, I've got a brand new guest this week, somebody I've only met through Instagram. So I am going to be getting to know Justin Avery Smith, and for the first time myself, as you guys get to know him here too. Hey, Justin.
Hello, Christos. Hello.
How's your day going?
Oh, not bad. Can't complain. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Awesome. So you are obviously a Star Trek fan. Justin, we're going to get to know you through our Trekking to Know You series of questions. Are you ready?
Oh, of course. Hit me.
All right, cool. So what was your first contact with Star Trek?
I'd say Next Generation, like reruns or, VHS being played on like my family's TV set and, just kind of observing and watching and absorbing through osmosis, and it just kind of snowballed from there.
Nice. So basically your family was a fan and you became a fan through that.
Yeah, basically. I mean, it actually, to give the full circle, the full content, my dad was, watched it when it was like on air, first thing. And so he can remember all that. And then my mother actually was not really into sci-fi at all, but TNG was airing like around the time they were dating. If I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure they married like in 93. So like just as TNG was like ending, and I was born in 95. So just in time to miss Generations and be too young for First Contact, but that's a whole other thing. And so he got her into it, and so it's just kind of been the one, the whole family affair.
I love that. That's a very common story, is parents exposing their kids to Star Trek, and it clicks. So that's pretty cool. So what is your favorite Trek series?
TNG, for sure. I mean, I'm sure nostalgia plays a lot in that, but I can also find a lot of great things to say about it as well.
Nice. I love TNG as well. Favorite episode?
Okay. Hear me out, yo. I was ready for this. And I would say my favorite, I couldn't think of a favorite episode, but I would say my favorite season is TNG season 5, which I was like a collection, because there were so many episodes in that season that I loved that because it has the Inner Light for one thing, which already puts it, high in the ranks. But then it's got other episodes I love, like Disaster and Power Play, and there was so many others. A Conundrum, like that. Those are just a few off the top. Darmok, oh my god, like those are like
Ethics.
I just can't really pick any one of those because they all have something I love about them. So I just kind of view it as it's like one long episode almost.
It's funny. I had Jack Tracy on last week, and Disaster was his favorite episode of all time. So you're kind of in there too. I also like that episode. Season 5 is good. I mean, TNG, as somebody who lived through it, that's when it was must-see television. I mean, I think they had well over 10 million plus viewers a week. They had the audience. Unification 1 and 2 are in season 5 too. So.
Oh yeah! Oh my god! I can't believe I forgot. Like those are great as well. But
Yes.
it's like strength to strength, firing on all cylinders. That was like when the show actually like, it really like it peaked because it got. I mean, season 1 was season 1. Season 2, it got a little better. I mean, we lost Dr. Crusher, but hey, give and take. Then we got her back, and then it got better in season 3. Then we had Best of Both Worlds, and then it just kind of real. And then season 5 it just like climaxed.
Yeah, awesome. What's your favorite movie?
I'm gonna be honest. I don't know if I have an answer for this one because I like, again, it sounds like a cop out, but I can appreciate them all for different. Believe me, I tried to think of a favorite. I really did, but each time I was like, okay, if I could only watch one, but then I was like, oh, but if I'm only watching this one, I won't get to enjoy what this one has, and I just couldn't. And so, plead the fifth.
Top 2?
Top 2. Okay, top 2 would definitely be Voyage Home is definitely in there, is one of the top 2. And against the other thing as well, like I have to include like one of the TNG movies, but that was the other thing where I love Generations because we get to see like the D in all its cinematic glory, but the First Contact obviously has the best story, but I also love the humor in Insurrection, so it was like
They all have something.
Yeah.
You're like dodging. You don't want to answer the questions. I love it.
No, yeah, no, like no, believe me, like I genuinely
I love it all.
I genuinely want to, but like every time, but like it's very hard for me to.
All right, I'm gonna get all Barbara Walters on you if you don't be careful.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I mean, go right ahead.
I think I know the answer to this one because it's why you reached out to me in the first place. But your favorite character?
Dr. Crusher.
Oh, yay! Another one.
Yeah, definitely.
You're also the second guest in a week.
Yeah. Oh, to say Dr. Crusher is the thing.
Yeah. Which is
yeah, I'm very glad. Like, it's one of the things I was actually so grateful for because for the longest time I felt like I was the only one or like one of the minority of people who appreciated her, and because she never seems to be in a lot of, I feel like a lot of people's top, but I'm very glad that she actually is.
Yeah. So I have found out through this podcast and just going to Star Trek conventions the last couple of years, she has a strong following of fans. But I remember what you were. I remember feeling the way you did. Like, I must be the only one. What's wrong? What is it about me? But there's a lot of heads out there, as they like to call themselves, or crushers, or. So, what is it about Dr. Crusher that you like so much?
Well, for one thing, I love that she's kind of like just like I think the best doctor, because a lot of doctors, it's either they have a great bedside manner, but they're not so great at diagnosing and treating, or they're great at treatments and whatnot, but they're not so great in bedside manner. I feel like you really get both with her, where she's just kind of like you can, you can have it all, but also I love that she always insists on treating people like no matter what, and she's very like stubborn and headstrong, and she never has any like provisions when it comes to who she cares for or any like ifs, ands, or buts. And also it doesn't hurt that Gates McFadden was the only one to return my fan mail as a kid, and so obviously that greatly endeared her to me as well.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, Dr. Crusher just, besides being a great doctor and great bedside manner, as you mentioned, she's also just a smart scientist as well, and very curious, I think is a good way to describe her. And I loved her in Picard season 3 because they took so many of those things and showcased it for once, finally.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your favorite captain?
I have to say Picard for certain, although I actually would say Pike is a close second, a very close second. Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty true. I mean, I don't know. It's getting harder and harder. We keep adding more captains to the deck, and used to be we just had 5 to keep track of for the longest time, and now we have a lot more. I like Picard and I like Pike. Those are definitely 2 strong ones. You like Janeway at all?
Oh yeah, no, I would say Janeway is like 3rd or 4th. It's like her and Kirk, I would say, kind of, go back and forth in the 3rd slot. So
interesting. I like that. Favorite Star Trek crush?
Yeah. Riker and Will Riker.
Will Riker, Daddy Riker.
Yeah, see, I think he was arguably, I would say, kind of like almost like my earliest awakening. And
all right. Oh, okay.
Just kind of like there's something about this guy. He's making me feel things. I don't understand what these feelings are, but I know I like them.
I think we've all had that every gay guy had that character somewhere along the line, somewhere on television. What is your favorite starship?
I would have to say the D for sure, the Galaxy. And I swear I'm not just picking TNG things just because they were the first, but like although I did come across, I'm not sure if it's canon or not, but or might be beta canon, but there's something called the Phalanx class starship, which is kind of like a Galaxy class and a Sovereign class had a baby. And because I love how sleek like the E or the Sovereign class is, but I also, maybe it's because the first one I ever saw was the D, so I have it in my mind that the nacelle should always be below the saucer. So to me, it looks like the Sovereign class or like the Constitution class almost have like a cowlick with their warp nacelles. I just want to like push them down. So I like that. Like it puts my mind at ease to see them below the saucer.
Constitution class is my favorite, as you can tell behind me. I liked when the Enterprise D came out and it had the lower, it was like sleeker and it seemed like sturdier type of frame to it. Have you seen images of the Ross class starship?
Oh yeah, that one. That one's kind of like a Galaxy class and a Ambassador class mixed together.
Yeah, but it's also like updated in the sense of how the more modern Federation ships look like, the Sovereign class and beyond. So it's kind of like if you wanted to keep building the Galaxy class, but giving it the comparable upgrades that that the technology, the way the technology was going.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's like, yeah.
I was about to say, I kind of almost hope more ships go the way of like the Neo Constitution, as they call it, where it's like the old one, but it's also like, you don't just like throw out the old, but you like add, you make something new out of it. And it just kind of, because I actually really like that one as well. Like if, this Star Trek Legacy thing does indeed pick up, I'm totally happy to like say, because that will be like, our generation's, Enterprise D or whatever have you.
Yeah. I liked how I think David Blass put out an illustration kind of showing the idea of how they built the Titan A, I guess you would call it, and now the Enterprise G. But it was basically like a double-decker star dock where the Luna class version of the Titan pulled in, and they started taking parts of it off, keeping some, getting rid of others. And so there are parts, I like the idea that there are parts of that Titan A that are the original Luna class, and then there are parts that are completely new. Mm-hmm. Like, so pretty cool. I like that. I liked how they explained how that came to be, and how Riker would still be familiar with parts of it, but then so would Captain Shaw. Mm-hmm. Favorite uniform?
Definitely, I would say either the TNG uniforms or the Strange New Worlds uniforms for sure. Because I honestly kind of wish, like, I'm not sure what you would call it, but in the Strange New Worlds, it's kind of like the scant, but it's got longer sleeves, and like that was definitely the one I kind of wish there was a version of that available in all iterations of, Trek or all eras.
Yeah.
Whereas like, because you don't get that with like the First Contact era or the movie era where it's just like pants, because I like I like it.
No, that's okay. So what version of TNG uniforms do you like? There was a couple of different looks over.
I'd say that the 2-piece one you want to call it, or like the one from like season 3 onwards.
Yeah. Or season 3.5.
3.
During those, if you ever go watch the beginning of season 3, they were still highly experimenting, although they had already gone 2-piece. But we were talking a little bit about that last week. They were definitely still working on getting it right.
Yeah, no, like I know you could tell you could still like see the stitching on like the breastplates or whatever that I don't know what the hell that was. Like you could see, and they just gave like unused one piece from the first 2 seasons to the extras.
Yeah. Well, it was kind of like that first idea that sometimes I guess you would have different uniforms for different people. Obviously, that was just wardrobe saving money because I think they only had made enough for the principal cast to start off with, and then it was getting a little more. They're also a lot more expensive to make. I do know that versus the spandex. All right, the big one here is, what does Star Trek mean to you?
For me, it means a better future, that humanity can and very much has within its capacity to be the best version of itself. That it has that, but it's realized its own potential, and it's it's a vision for curiosity over judgment, exploration over complacency, optimism over pessimism.
Yeah, it was really well put. Yeah, I think it's definitely, we've talked about this on the show a lot of times, but it's just that better future where it kind of gives hope, right? Like just that we're going to get our crap together and solve some of these problems.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like there's been more than once where like I've had to, like I've been saying certain like lines or quotes to myself like a mantra as if like I remind myself that like this is gonna happen, because as morbid as it sounds to say, it almost kind of feels like we're following the timeline of Star Trek a little too closely.
Yeah. Do you know who Rachel Maddow is?
Oh, yeah, of course, the MSNBC political commentator, yeah.
Yeah. So she has a new podcast called Deja News.
Yeah.
And it, like episode 2 just dropped today. I was listening to it in the car this morning, and it deals with this idea of things that happened in our past that mirror things that are happening now. So today's episode is all about the lovely state of Florida and the fact that in the late 1950s and early 60s, they were very much doing this same type of witch hunt, pointing fingers, government getting way too involved with schools and things like that. And then there was a big backlash eventually to it. So it's kind of like little hope that, people, as extreme as things were at one point, people snapped out of it. So, and put a stop to it. So try to take a little bit of hope from all that. That's kind of where I was going with this. It's like, there's
no, definitely
things like that. Things like that kind of give me hope.
Yeah, no, same. I think of also what Picard said when he was like, vigilance is the price we must continually pay, because I think that's something that maybe the cycle we need to break more often, where we often get like, okay, we solved that and it's never going to happen again. And then it happens again. So,
yeah. Well, like pendulum swing. I mean, you kind of got, not that we're getting into politics here, but, Trump was a far right's reaction to Obama. You know what I mean? So it's like we need to course correct, obviously, again, because the pendulum swang way too far the other way and then some. So I don't know. I try to hold out hope for that better future.
Definitely.
All right. So let's get back to Trek.
Of course.
Sorry to get us off course there.
No, it's like Trek was never political.
No. So we already had our first episode of Strange New World, season 2. And you've watched, correct?
Of course.
I know, stupid question, right?
Yeah, no stupid questions, only stupid answers.
Right. So let's jump back into some slides here. All right. So let's maybe just talk a little bit. What did you think of the season premiere?
Oh yeah, no, I liked it. It's very much kind of like it felt very familiar, but also new, which I think most season premieres should. I'm, like the things I love. Just like I said, I love Carol Kane's character. Thought she was hilarious and fun, and it's so weird how I feel like there were a lot of things that were very like, I guess you could say like familiar and tropey, but also like fun and exciting and fresh, because it's weird. I can't like name a specific example, but I was like, I feel I've seen this before where like a character goes, oh, like you're doing this really bad thing you shouldn't be doing, and I'll keep my mouth shut if you let me in on it.
Right? Like we've never seen that before. Uh, I loved her. I thought, like, for me, she was like the best part of the episode, and I've got some screen caps to share, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't grab one of her. But she definitely was like a breath of fresh air. This idea that her species was living on Earth for a long time, undercover, because they presented as human. Pretty cool, I thought. Kind of gives me a little bit of a Guinan vibe. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, because I was just like, okay, so you're like centuries old, and yet you only look like a human who's lived a few decades. So how's that work out?
Well, I mean, there's that whole idea of people, the way that people are aging, I guess. Like, she might be 70. I think the actress is roughly 70 years old, let's just say. Yeah. But if she's hundreds of years old, then where is she in her, I don't know, where is she? Where is she in the life cycle of? I was looking up on the side here, so sorry for the distraction. Where is the life cycle of a lanthanite? There we go. That's how you say it.
Yeah, I don't remember that species being like. It's always hard to keep track of, like, okay, wait, did we met them yet, or did they?
Dude, you don't. I mean, you're not kidding. It's like Star Trek is like. Is that a deep cut? Are they new? Have I ever seen it? Am I a bad fan? Am I a good fan? Did I remember that? Oh yeah, they're new. Okay. And this idea that they were on Earth is also a new concept too. That there was aliens living among us, so to speak.
Yeah, it reminds me of I can't remember what they're called, but there was that episode of Voyager, Distant Origin, where there was like that. It was like dinosaurs that like left Earth and like ended up in the Delta Quadrant and then evolved into like humanoid. It reminds me of that a bit.
Yeah. Well. I have not seen that episode in a long time. And ironically, it was just referenced somewhere else. I think it was on Captain's Couch. I was listening to the other day, which is another BQN podcast with Captain Jeremiah. Plug. So what did you think of the reintroduction of the Klingons after we haven't really seen them in the new Trek world since, I guess, Chancellor Laurel was probably the last time we saw one in season 2. She was also in season 1 of Discovery. But the Discovery Klingons, I guess, which evolved a little bit by season 2. And now we're seeing another update to their look.
Yeah, I know, where it's like, it's been a while since I've seen both, but didn't like Enterprise try to explain like why they look different in the original series versus TNG, but now they kind of look like they do in the TNG as opposed to, I mean, I can't. It's very hard to keep track of the timeline, because I thought that was like a phage, or not a phage, but like a disease or that lasted centuries. But then, I mean, I'm not complaining, because generally, I mean, I'll always welcome more Klingon things because they're always fun and interesting to watch. But and also because I
love the Klingons. I don't know why they just. I don't know why people get so upset about the way they look. They change around. I mean, they got retconned big time from Star Trek from when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out to the way they looked on the 1960s Star Trek, and then even then they evolved them again by Star Trek 3, which then became kind of the look for what would become known as the Berman era. But yeah, I loved when Enterprise did a 3-part episode to try to explain. It was a 3-part or 2-part that explained why they can look human. Some can look human and some don't. But there was a lot of variety of Klingons in this episode of Strange New Worlds. And I think most people are like, oh, look, they look like TNG Klingons again. But I'm like, if you really look at them, there's still a lot of influence from Discovery Klingons. What's changed is the makeup has gone back to that dark brown. That's what makes it feel a lot more familiar, like TNG Klingons, as you could say.
Yeah, definitely. Like, they even kind of look a little bit like motion picture Klingons as well, because where they both kind of looked like an early template for what would become like the Berman era Klingons.
Yeah. I did like seeing the Klingons back, aside from their aesthetic. We can throw that aside now.
Yeah.
It was great to have them back. They're still like, there was a time when you couldn't say Star Trek without talking about Klingons. And I love that we've world builded enough, and it's not just always about the Klingons anymore, but it's good to see them back. The D7 cruiser we saw back in this episode, very classic. What about this idea that Spock and Chapel kind of have a thing going on? How do you feel about that?
I mean, it's weird. Like, I'm fairly neutral. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, I want to see where it goes before I cast any judgment, because, I mean, there's been, since the dawn of time, and not in and out of Trek, characters are like, oh, that would never work, or that sounds like, I mean, bear in mind, I was actually one of those weirdos who preferred seeing Worf and Deanna together, because I kind of liked their balance, their dynamic, and I always kind of saw Riker as like the perpetual bachelor. But I'm glad, I'm happy for them, so I'm not going to complain. So,
right.
I
like that. Yeah, Worf and Deanna have a lot of shippers out there that like them. I remember when it happened. Like, people were like, "Oh wow, they're together now." It was pretty cool, I thought. What I was going to say was, so are you a big fan of the original series? Are you a big completist? Or are you like, oh, that's too old, doesn't look up very well? There's no wrong answer to this. I'm not setting you up for a slam. I'm not setting you up to slam you or anything.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I mean, I don't know. It was the original series. It was always kind of interesting for me because I was introduced to TNG first. And what do the words next generation mean to a 6-year-old? So in my mind, this was just Star Trek, also because that's how we colloquially called it in our house. So imagine my surprise, like seeing Generations, I was like the one person where that meant like nothing to me. Seeing like, I'm like, who is this other guy in this other ship and all that, and like not realizing that this was meant to be like a passing of the torch somewhat. Yeah. But I have seen there are a few episodes I have seen and quite enjoy, Balance of Terror, City on the Edge of Forever, Trouble with Tribbles. I mean, I haven't seen all of them, and I haven't seen, like, I will admit, a few of them I found, like, either just weird or boring, like, it's, which is very much a Roddenberry thing. Like, you notice most of the episodes of either show he's written are usually the ones that are more just, like, ethereal and contemplative and philosophical and aren't as like action packed, but it's okay.
Yeah, well, and the reason I was going to ask is like when it comes to canon stuff, people who care about canon, don't care about canon. I feel like this idea that it doesn't make sense in canon that Chapel and Spock have a thing going on now because it doesn't match up with the original series. I find like people who don't watch the original series or haven't seen the original series probably don't care about that. Or the fact that it was so long ago that a minor retcon is not a big deal. And then there are people who are like, no, this never happened. This is not Star Trek. You guys are pissing me off. So I think sometimes whether or not you're a big fan of the old stuff, new stuff, I'm pretty protective of TNG canon. So if somebody starts messing with that, I'm going to be mad. But so it might just be a matter of age. Interestingly, I met a 25-year-old this weekend when I was out in Palm Springs. We were all hanging out by the pool, and this guy mentioned Star Trek came up, as it inevitably does. He's like, oh, I love Star Trek. I watch it. Well, his only Star Trek has been New Trek. He loves Discovery. He's watched Discovery from the beginning. He's watching Strange New Worlds. He's watching Picard. He watched all 3 seasons of Picard, never having watched the Next Generation.
That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, well, first off, good. I guess Paramount Plus is penetrating, and starting to get new people interested. But it was interesting to see what he thought of season 3 of Picard, not really caring about Worf and Dr. Crusher and Riker and who they are. And, he's like, well, I was talking to him about the Commander Rowe, and I was like, that was a big deal because, that stuff that they were acting that's referencing about 6 episodes of history between Picard and Ro, from TNG. Anyways, just interesting to take that in. But back to Strange New Worlds. I like where it's going. It was kind of a really, like Jack Tracy said this last week, like it's action packed. He had seen the premiere in New York. He's like, it's more of an action episode than anything. And it was, and I'm not sure how well I felt about Mbenga and Chapel basically getting high on something and beating the shit out of a bunch of Klingons. Like, why don't people do that more often? It's just kind of like this idea of super soldiers, and isn't that a little bit of genetic manipulation?
Yes, very eugenics war of them.
Yeah, that's very eugenics wars. So maybe whatever they did is very much not sanctioned, and I hope maybe that gets addressed somehow, because it seemed a little weird that there would be that kind of individual genetic manipulation going on. Awesome. So I'm really much looking forward to the rest of the season. I think we have our big courtroom drama. The last really big thing, it was weird, but I was okay with the fact that, I knew Una really wasn't going to be in episode 1. She only had one little scene, but Pike was barely in episode 1. And
that was weird to me too.
Yeah. I didn't mind it. I know he plays pretty heavy the rest of the season from what they're saying. So, and he played very, very, very prominent in season 1. So, but he is the lead, but it's an ensemble. And you did see that they really kind of gelled. I feel like more like a crew that kind of have each other's backs. It's like they know each other now. And it feels like it's kind of very TNG, the way they're friends, and they're going to do anything for each other, including break the rules. Very, very, very much a TNG vibe. I felt that way.
Yeah, definitely. And it was so weird, like, because seeing it, and Spock's like, we have to steal the Enterprise, where I was like, I was like, okay, so all at once we've seen that before, but it hasn't happened yet, and this time it's Spock, but he's not saving. But if it had been like Spock saving Kirk, maybe that would have been one thing. But it's so I just thought that was very interesting. Where on the one hand, it'd be very easy to call it lazy, but the way they did it wasn't just like copy and pasting, stealing the Enterprise from the Search for Spock. So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Well, yeah, and stealing the Enterprise is almost like a trope now, right? Like it's a thing. But I like the way they do it. I love that Carol Kane's character, Perella. I'm saying it. I know it's not.
The chief engineer, I think.
Chief engineer, or soon to be chief engineer. Pelia. Jeez, butchered that. Pelia. Yeah. Butchered that. Sounds very Greek. Anyways, I love that she had a hand in stealing the Enterprise, like you said. That was pretty cool. All right. Moving on, topic 2 this week. There is yet another Star Trek video game on the way.
Yeah.
I mean, we literally just got Resurgence, which is awesome, and I'm loving it.
Yep.
But Star Trek Infinite was announced early last week, and then they dropped the first gameplay images on Captain Picard Day, which was the 15th.
Oh.
Have you did you watch the little short 45 second trailer? 45 minutes, that's awful.
Yeah. Oh God, don't we wish? No.
Yeah,
I saw it like when it came out last week at Summer Games Fest. I think was when it was first revealed.
Yeah.
They said it was going to be a strategy game. Correct.
Very much. Here, I'll read you out the short little blurb here. Star Trek Infinite is a grand strategy experience that lets you play your own Star Trek story as the leader of one of 4 major factions in the Alpha Quadrant. Follow the specially crafted story or blaze your own trail with diplomacy, espionage, or warfare in the first Star Trek grand strategy. And then I think the 4 factions are Cardassian, Federation, Romulan, and Klingon. I saw that from there. The little teaser trailer they played about a week or so ago they kind of put it before TNG, but everything I've seen in the trailer, I mean, they show the Borg, they show the Enterprise D, they show ships that came after the Enterprise D. They like, and here I'll just jump to this next slide here. You can barely see it, but as you're building in your strategy, there's like Dr. Crusher and Troy, and like it's literally pulling TNG stuff. So I'm like, I don't know. I think there might be some misinformation here or there with the game. Like maybe it was meant to be this, but it went the other way. I don't know. I feel like that's a little bit ambiguous, but it seems to be really leaning into TNG, which I'm not mad at. But I'm looking forward to it. This is a PC game. It's also going to be on Windows or Mac, I believe, which is cool because I'm a Mac guy. But it's not an Xbox or a PlayStation type game. Console, I guess, as the kids call them. So yeah, looking forward to this. And then I also I've seen some articles say 2023, some say 2024. So I don't know. Make up your mind. All right. More to that to come as we know. My last big topic of the day was that they finally have announced, I guess this is the last part of Star Trek Picard. We'll get, its season's done, right? But then getting it to home video or Blu-ray, I think they announced a whole bunch of stuff on Friday for this. So you're going to see Star Trek Picard final season on DVD, which I don't even know who's buying that. You're going to also see it on Blu-ray and a special Blu-ray steelbook for those who collect those. We are also going to get a complete series of Picard, all 3 seasons, and I believe over 7 hours of bonus features. And then if that wasn't enough for anybody, there's the granddaddy of them all, the Star Trek Picard Legacy Collection, which here I'm going to read to you everything that comes in this awesome box set. It looks gorgeous, but I'm not buying it, for the record, folks. It has seasons 1 through 7 of Star Trek The Next Generation, seasons 1 through 3 of Star Trek Picard, Star Trek Generations, First Contact, Insurrection, and Nemesis, over 35 hours of bonus features, premium package containing 54 Blu-ray discs, 154 episodes, and exclusive collectibles. And those exclusive collectibles are magnetic Captain Picard badges, 4 custom Chateau Picard drink coasters, a custom deck of playing cards, exclusive version of the Wisdom of Picard, and then the Legacy Edition includes new cover art and including quotes from the latest season of Star Trek Picard. Oh, that I know they're talking about the Wisdom of Picard. I have it behind me. It's a little book about, yay big, about the size of a compact disc, if you know what that is. And and it has all kind of Picard quotes, but it sounds like it's been updated to feature quotes from every era. That's kind of nuts, don't you think?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm personally not complaining. I mean, it's great to offer all this, and it's kind of it's only natural. I mean, excuse me, that I'm actually really glad that they're making physical media out of something that they could just dump on Paramount Plus and call it a day. Where there's all that talk of streaming versus digital or versus physical media and where that stands. So I'm glad to see that they're not just resting on their streaming laurels.
Yeah. Well, CBS has done a pretty good job of making it so you need the physical media. Like if you want any of the bonus features, things like that, you have to buy the physical media. I will say Strange New Worlds came out on DVD, Blu-ray, season 1. And for the first, I usually avoid them on iTunes because they don't have the special features. They have all these little 2-minute clips. But they actually, for Strange New Worlds, put all the featurettes, the 45-minute, 1 hour behind the scenes, they put it all in there on Apple. So if you bought it digitally, you got all the content that was on the Blu-rays. So lot of people have gotten mad at Paramount. You know, I mean, the movies have been there, disappeared, been there, showed up on HBO, disappeared off HBO. I believe right now you can still, I think all 13 movies are back on Paramount Plus, but will they be there next month? Will Paramount Plus always be around? Question mark. I find that I still like the only physical media I still buy in my life is Star Trek. I don't buy it for anything else, but just Star Trek. And this would be a big waste of money for me because I already have all 7 seasons of TNG on Blu-ray back they came out, and I just got the new 4K versions of the films that just came out. And the only thing I don't have is season 3 of Picard, and some of this swag that it has not been released yet. So, anyways, yeah. I do like that they kind of get with the varying covers, though, for the different types of releases. Like I said, I kind of like those steel books there. They're pretty sharp. And they have not confirmed yet whether or not there will or won't be a 4K release of Picard. They did do a 4K Blu-ray release of Strange New World Season 1. So,
that's awesome.
It's beautiful. And that showed it. I mean, I'm just such a big fan of Strange New World, so I was like, yeah, I'll buy it.
Yeah. I just assumed that this day and age 4K was the default. So that's interesting to me.
Yeah. It's interesting too. The on iTunes, Strange New World is in 4K too. So I'm like, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, the 4K Blu-rays, you have to have a special player for that. So they play nicely on my PS5 though. So.
I haven't tried to play Blu-rays on my PS5 at all. For some reason, like I remember I still have my PS3, and I still remember first getting it, and I was just like, oh, cool, I don't need a Blu-ray player, so I thought that was cool.
That was my first Blu-ray player, was my PS3, and I still have that in a box somewhere in the other room. I still actually have my PS3, but my PS5, I got that about 6 months ago, and that was part of what sold me on it was I could play 4K Blu-rays. So, I'm like, okay, that's another perk on top of the gameplay and all that stuff. So, We would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, to continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @What'sTheTBev or leave a comment on YouTube if you are watching this episode. Please hit like and the subscribe button here on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a star rating and a written review. That helps others to find the show. So, Justin, where can people find you?
Oh, okay. You can find me on Twitter @Just Avery Smith. Turns out there's a character limit, so I couldn't use my full name. Same on TikTok, where I do post a lot of Trek-related content and videos and edits. And Instagram, Justin Avery Smith.
Awesome. At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Davey Willett and Matt Harker. Hey, guys. If you would like to help us keep our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group with a monthly subscription of $5 or more. You can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages. So, Justin, thank you so much for reaching out to me on Instagram. Thank you so much for being a big Beverly fan. I love that. And thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much, Christos. Thank you for giving Beverly the justice and the platform that she so rightly deserves, and doing your part for the very good cause.
I love that. Listeners, thank you for listening, and we hope you'll join us next time for more tea on What's the T-Bev? Live long and prosper.
What shows are on BQN, you ask? Well, here's a rundown of some podcasts you might be interested in. All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast covering all of Trek, hosted by Amy, Mark, Christos, and Kelvin. Bargain Bin Gamer, a YouTube show hosted by Davey, a self-proclaimed gamer who specializes in reviewing and showcasing affordable video games. If you're lost in the Delta Quadrant, check out The Captain's Couch, a Star Trek Voyager podcast hosted by Jeremiah sitting on Janeway's Ready Room couch. Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast showcasing films you probably missed but should definitely check out, hosted by Mark, Matt, and Laz. Beam Aboard the Galaxy Class, a Star Trek Next Generation podcast covering all of TNG, hosted by Amy, Joe, Rhea, and Kevin. History with the Zilagis, a snippet of historical events from around the world, hosted by Chrissy and Jason. For the newest Trek coverage, check out Infinite Diversity, hosted by Chrissy and Thad. Test your Trek knowledge with Treksperts Quiz, a Star Trek quiz show hosted and written by Davey. Union Federation, covering all things Star Trek and the Orville, which we all know is really a Star Trek show, hosted by Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley. Spill the Tea with What's the Tea, Bev, a Trek current events and fan interview show hosted by Christos. And for our Patreon members, we have The Hive Mind, BQN's monthly roundtable discussion with hosts and listeners. It's Green, a cornucopia of topics hosted by Mark, and Amy's Math Moments, a quick look at math moments in Star Trek, hosted by Amy. We know you have a choice of podcasts to choose from, and we thank you for listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.